my vision, every desire. Keep for your glory, my soul inspired. With your perfection and your holy love, flooding my pathway with light from above. And fill all my vision, Savior divine, till with your glory my spirit shall shine. And fill all my vision, that all may see your holy image reflected in me, reflected in me.
Good afternoon and welcome to Coffee and Conversations. My name is Jason Goodson, here with Johnny Taylor, and have a guest with us today from, he's on the beach today in South Mississippi.
From a distant land.
Or are you in Mobile? Where are you at?
I'm in Perdido Key, Florida.
Oh, my goodness.
He is in Florida.
That's a really nice place.
Mr. Andy Baker. And, tell us why you're at the beach.
Today is my wife's 24th birthday, so I planned a little 3-day beach trip and left our child with her parents. So it's just me and her relaxing and hanging out. So,
well, the child is old enough now that you can go away for 3 days and not have to worry about too much.
That's right.
That's good.
So it's been a good time.
Awesome. We are here in East Texas on a Thursday afternoon, or it's actually, what are we going to print this on a Monday?
It's Thursday afternoon we're recording, but we'll put it out next week.
That's right. We're going to be gone. It's Thanksgiving coming up.
Yes, we won't have one the next week after that. So
JT and I are wearing antlers.
Get in the Christmas spirit here, or the Christmas mood, whatever you want to call it.
You know, the mic I'm sitting here talking in front of has a red cover on it.
Matches your antlers.
It could be like Rudolph.
You can take off the little cover
Take
and
the
put it on
cover
your
off,
nose.
put it on your nose.
We'll put up a picture before Christmas.
At least I'm leading the reindeer. That's one thing I'm proud about. Yeah. So other than that, we're and just in kind of you're right. This is getting kind of uncomfortable. Removing the antlers.
We're antlerless now.
Oh man, we should have wore those during the World Series. You're right. We could have had put the Kavorka on the Rangers. Maybe they'd have hit the ball.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're here. Basically, today I've got we got a few things we want to discuss with you on the subject of Deuteronomy. Ooh, so exciting. Deuteronomy right before Thanksgiving. Maybe that'll make the turkey go down a little easier.
Oh, my.
I used to think that there was nothing exciting about Deuteronomy whatsoever. Now there is.
What was it Jesus told the Pharisees? You search the scriptures, and it are these that point to me.
It are these that point to me. I believe it was John chapter 5, verse 6.
And guess what he was talking about?
He was talking about Deuteronomy, part of it.
Yep.
It's like Leviticus to me. Everybody thinks it's so boring, but I think it's full of truth and grace and mercy.
That's the great thing about these scriptures is that they're all full of grace, mercy, and have life in them. And the interesting thing is man, we're going to talk. I don't know. I've probably read Deuteronomy in my lifetime, 3 to 4 times solidly all the way through.
Yeah.
And never really just studied it, but boy, I tell you what, I mean, this past year it's been an excellent course of action for me, just to see the scriptures come alive, especially in the Old Testament, because I've been a New Testament fiend for such a long time, and just read the New Testament pretty much exclusively, and really started seeing some really cool truths given by God this year, and especially we started in Genesis, and in my youth group on Wednesday night we started in Genesis, and we are like at the very end point here, starting and starting to pounce through Deuteronomy to finish up the year. And so there's some pretty cool stuff that we read in here the other night. So we'll get to that in a few minutes. Just wanted to share an important Facebook quote with you guys. I'm just kind of springing this on you. Last minute here. And we haven't done a Facebook quote in a while. One of our buddies from Monday night, he has a quote on here about his son.
I was just thinking about that one.
He says, well, this is Bobby Simmons talking about his son Trey, who is about to be 3, I believe. He's 2, he's about to be 3.
I'm thinking he was already 3, but
Maybe so. One tells you how much he's a couple months younger than Lucy.
yeah. How old is Lucy?
She's 3.
Okay.
He says, I said, this is Bobby speaking, of course. I said, Trey, why do you have to smudge up the window? In the question form. Trey responds and says, because there's lots of boogers in there, and I got to put them on the window. And then he puts on there, ... Can't argue with that logic. I could just see the kid going up to the window and just rubbing his nose all over it.
Or digging real deep and then smearing it on the window.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's probably got a stash somewhere.
Yep.
I used to live in South Florida. And I used to live down in a place called Weston, Florida, to be exact. And Weston, Florida is kind of the place where the athletes who play for the Miami sports teams, like the Marlins and the Dolphins and the Panthers and the Heat, Weston is where they all live.
Yeah.
That's the community they all live in, and I served down there in the church for a couple of years. And one day I'm sitting in, totally random. Sorry, guys.
That must be the other 45,000 in the community.
Yes, there were a lot of them down there too, man. You would not believe there's a lot of retired athletes live down there. Anyways, downtown, like half of downtown Weston is owned by Dan Marino.
Nice.
And
Oh my.
and he has a big place in Weston. He lives in this section of town where it's nothing but $1 million homes in there, and they're all on like 5 acres of land, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's basically Weston's just converted out there. Converted. It's like right on the edge of Fort Lauderdale and Miami, and it stretches all the way across the southern tip of Florida down there. I can't remember the name of the road now. It's called Alligator Alley is what they call it, but there's a specific number for it. But Weston's kind of the last frontier before you go into
Yeah.
that
I've
area.
seen it on NC or one
Anyways,
of the TV shows.
I'm down there with the youth pastor I worked with. His name is Eric Bennett, and we are inside a Starbucks down there, and we're talking. I don't know what we're talking about, but he kind of grabs my attention. Says, "Hey, there's Dan Marino." I'll turn around, and I got myself a little macchiato in my hand, and I turn, and Marino's parked his vehicle right outside the door at Starbucks. Okay,
Because you can.
because he can. Yeah.
He probably owns it.
Dan
He probably
Marino.
did. I'm not even joking about this. He gets out of his vehicle, walks in, and there's a line like trailing to the door
Yeah.
to get
He
coffee.
walked out the front,
He walks
didn't he?
in. He walks straight up to the counter, and 4 cups of coffee are handed to him. He says, he lifts his hands up and he walks right out and gets back in his car and leaves. I'm like,
He didn't have to order them; they just gave them to him.
yeah,
He probably owns the place and called
Did he
ahead.
pay for them?
I don't know, bro.
I bet he owned the place.
He probably does.
He probably owned it, or they just put it on his tab. Dan the man has a tab at Starbucks.
Yeah, and so Eric posted on here, Dan Marino at Starbucks. Just another day in Weston.
Yeah, I wonder what did you do?
What was I doing down there?
Oh no, I'm talking about like when Dan Marino walks in somewhere. I mean, he's a pretty famous quarterback.
Oh, people
would've,
just kind of, it's kind of, how the Red Sea parted? It's kind of how what the people did.
They
It was
just
like
step back and look.
royalty walked through or something. Yeah, it was like an awe. They were kind of in that position where they walked in and oh, here comes Dan Marino and
That's something you see in a movie. It just splits and he
Yeah.
walks through.
He probably is royalty down there in that area.
I pretty much so. I mean,
Days of Miami Dolphins actually being good.
yeah, and he can actually throw the football. Yeah. So I got another random fact I'm going to throw out here, and nothing absolutely to do with what we're talking about today, but just one of those days. I'm sitting in here like 2 days ago. I'm feeling horrible. And finally, Kathy, she gives me she gives me one of those cards to go to the doctor. She says, "You're going."
Which probably means you've been grumpy around home.
Oh man.
That's right.
I didn't really want to go to the doctor. So I'm feeling okay. I get in there and I'm filling out the stuff and everything, and so I'm filling out everything and I go back into the room, and I noticed one thing about the place where I'm going in my hometown where I grew up. By the way, is that all the girls that work there, I went to high school with. It was one of those weird deals. So I walk in there and I was like saying hi to these people, hi to her, hey, how's it going, whatever. And I go in there. I tell the doctor I probably should have come in 3 weeks ago and told him, I said, I've been, coughing really bad. And I said, but I hadn't had fever was my first thing that come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And so they take my temperature, and what do I have? I got fever.
That's funny, man.
Man, and so I was like wondering. I said, "Well, how long do you think I had that fever?" He goes, "Oh, you probably been carrying it around this whole time. You've had that cough." I was like,
Jeez.
"You're kidding me."
Exposing all of us to all of whatever he has.
Sorry, but I'll tell you this. I mean, Tuesday, I felt pretty bad. Like I was like, I felt bad enough that I didn't go up to the coffee shop and get to bed like I was supposed to that day.
Yep.
I was feeling pretty bad, and I ended up. He says, "Well, we're going to give you this and this and this and whatever." And so he goes, "If you don't mind us giving you a shot, we'll give you a shot." I said, "No, I don't care. Shot, whatever." And the girl walks in, and she says, "I need a hit." Like HIT, hit.
Yeah.
Okay? And so my thought when she said this was, a hit? I was like, I don't want to hit you. And she smiled real big back at me. She says, "No, that's not what I said. I need a hip." And dude, I'm going to tell you something. When she pulled that cap off that shot,
Yeah.
the size of that needle was,
She stuck you, didn't she?
if she would have stuck me anywhere else, I mean, it'd have gone into the bone. I was like, good grief. I said, what you about to get? I mean,
I bet it was a Decadron shot.
it was a
so
steroid of some
That's
kind.
what it is. Not Decadron now. It's I forget what they give you now, but something
That's-
like that.
But I think she hit like a.
Celeste's one of those they used to give.
I think she hit a nerve because she stuck that thing in me.
No, those things. When they start putting that stuff in, it hurts.
She stuck that thing into me, and I think she hit something because my whole body just kind of started swaying a little bit. I said, dude, did you just hit my spinal cord? Because that kind of hurt.
Get a little tear in your eye.
No, I didn't
Yeah.
cry. I was trying to be a man.
Yeah, they tell you don't sit down for a while after taking one of those.
Yeah.
Walk it off, because if you don't, you won't be able to move in a little bit.
That's what when it's funny. I twisted my ankle really bad, sprained it really bad a couple weeks ago playing basketball, and I waited a week because I've broken my ankle, sprained them. It's nothing new. But then I went to the doctors. It was getting worse. Well, I walk in to get my ankle looked at, and what do? They take my temperature. I'm going, I'm not here because I'm sick. I was like, I just need. I'm here to get an X-ray, and then let me leave. I just had to get an X-ray.
Right.
She's like, let me take your temperature, and took my blood pressure and everything. I was like, man, that's weird.
Yeah, they always do
Ankle
that.
injury.
So,
Yep. Okay. Here we go.
How's that for random?
Hey, man, I'm tell you what. No, we're all a
feeling
little bit
pretty random
Pretty
today.
random at the moment.
I am overlooking a very, very beautiful sunset, by the way. Just throw that out there.
yeah,
Well,
I can kind of see the sun here, although it had rain on the radar a while ago, but it never did rain. Kind of weird. But
You kind of tie this into what you're talking about there. You're looking over sunset.
Creation.
Creation right there. Moses, at the start of Deuteronomy, is 37 days away from dying. He knows it's coming, I think, that he's basically delivering the final.
Yeah, he's either dying or he's going to be living out in the desert by himself.
Either one, but he knows it's coming. Okay, and so he's delivering this speech to the children of Israel, and that's basically what Deuteronomy is. It's a final, it's a final message. It's they call it the second law of the book. They call it the second law, but if you read the original Hebrew, gives it the opening words are basically that these are the words, and it's called Debarim is what it's called in the Hebrew. These are the words. Deuteronomy is the Greek version of the name that comes into there. And one of the things that he talks to them about in verse Deuteronomy 1:8, he goes in there and says, "See, I've set the land before you. Go in and take possession of the land that the Lord swore to your forefathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give to them, to their offspring after them." Now, he goes in and he mentions Abraham, he mentions Isaac, he mentions Jacob. And Abraham was the first one to receive this covenant that God had basically picked him out and given him this covenant, and he gives him a promise in the midst of this covenant that he's giving. He says, basically, you're going to go from this country, you and your kindred in Genesis 12, and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will dishonor those. And him who dishonors you I will curse, and in all your families of the earth shall be blessed. And so Abraham went and told Lot what had happened, and Abraham's 75 years old, and he departed from Haran. All right. Well, he goes on. He says in Genesis 17, he says, "And I will establish my covenant between me and you," Genesis 17:7. "I'll establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations from an everlasting covenant to be God to you and your offspring after you. And I will give to you and your offspring after you the land of your sojournings and all the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession." Okay? In Deuteronomy 1:8, he talks about, that's 8:1. Deuteronomy 1:8 says, "See, I've set the land before you. Go in and take possession. Go in and take possession of what's there for you already." And I believe it's Genesis 22. As we're looking here, and there's a purpose I'm mentioning all this. Oh yeah, he said 22:17, "I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand that is on the seashore, and your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies." Okay, and he's given.
It's pretty interesting that they're getting all this based on a promise to somebody else,
Right,
not on a promise to them.
right. It's all based on the promise that he is going to do what he says he's going to do. And you're right, and they have taken possession of what was promised to somebody else, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom are their forefathers. They're just the receivers of what's going to happen. Okay, and some pretty interesting stuff happens through there, because Moses starts his speech off, and he's mentioning these times that they spent in the wilderness, like with Arabah and Suf and Paran and Tophel, Laban, Hazeroth, all these weird names that nobody gives a crap about. And what happens is, these are all the places that all the children of Israel is where they sinned.
Yeah.
And where they had their places they messed up. And he's subtly giving them, hey, even though you've done this,
Yeah.
here's a great inheritance coming for you, coming towards you. And here's what's, but of course that speech goes on way further than just, than just saying here's what you got coming ahead of you, but here's also some things that you can expect as well. He mentions 2 names in the midst of this whole thing. 2 down further on in chapter 1. He mentions Caleb in verse 36, and he mentions Joshua in verse 38. Now, who were Joshua and Caleb?
The 2 spies out of the 12.
The 2 spies out of the 12 that were sent by God, by Abraham, to go into to spy out the promised land. And what was 10 of them complaining about?
Oh, 10 of them said it was a great place, but they're giants in the land. We were as grasshoppers in their sight, or in our sight. That's what it says.
It's a great analogy. I've never thought about that one.
Yeah, I think it says that we were as grasshoppers in our sight.
I believe it's Numbers. If you want to get Numbers 13 or 14, I believe is what it was.
But now what they said, what Joshua and Caleb said, was quite a bit different. They saw the same thing,
That's right.
but they saw the giants, and they said they're food for us.
Yep.
They are but food. And so the funny thing is that God honors that faithfulness and trust that they had in him. And largely what this whole thing, this whole beginning part of Deuteronomy does is handles the area between belief and unbelief.
Yeah.
And literally a large problem that the Israelites had was their unbelief and trust that God was going to do what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
And when Moses mentioned those cities and those areas of land in the first part of chapter 1, it was not a mistake. He was not doing it. He was saying, this is what has happened here. So as we begin to think about, just our life and how we're living our life, do we believe? Are we living in belief? Are we living in unbelief? Some of the things of questions that we look at is we forget to notice that the things is that, yeah, we may face giants in the land. We may face and see these things, but part of the problem is going to end up being not that we're facing giants, but that we are in disbelief that we can overcome those giants.
Well, it was just like we were talking about then. The 10 saw the same as the 2,
That's right.
but they totally had a different view of what it meant,
Totally had a different idea.
because 2 trusted that it was God that was going to do it, and not in their own strength. And the 10 thought, hey, we got to go in there and in our strength, we got to beat these giants, and we can't do that.
Right. And the book of Deuteronomy overall, it's just a restatement of what has happened in Genesis to Numbers, and he's restating this is how you are to live, and it all dives down into and becomes essentially a part of our relationship with God. Some of the natural responses from just being intimate with God are going to be a couple things.
Yeah.
Natural, just typical natural responses is that we will obey.
Yeah.
We will obey and we will worship. Those are the two responses. And you know what that is? That's just living. It's lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's not there's not a formula to it. There's not a 12-step program that's going to get you there. Here's
Right.
7 easy steps to becoming a better worshiper. Well, it's not it.
Well, there's a perfect example of the whole thing in Deuteronomy 1 there, because he's talking about what they tried to do after Moses said, well, now you didn't believe, so you're not going to see the land.
Right.
And the very next thing they did, we'll do it. And they go and try to fight the dude in their own strength.
That's right.
They go right back to the opposite.
Try to do this on your own.
Yeah, they try to do it on their own. Got to earn our way. And which was just as bad as the part before. So
That's right. Just as bad. And the cool thing here is it says, let's look at the scripture there in verse, I believe it starts in verse and says, And the Lord heard the words and was angered, and he swore, in verse 34,
Yeah.
not one of these men of this evil generation shall see the good land that I swore to give the fathers, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and he shall see it, and to him and to his children I will give the land and which he has trodden, because he was holy, because he has wholly followed the Lord. Even with the Lord, even with me, it says in verse 37, even with me the Lord was angry on your account, and said, you shall not go in there. Joshua the son of Nun, who stands before you, shall enter. He shall enter. Encourage him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit it. And as for you, little ones, you said would become a prey, and your children, who today have no knowledge of good or evil, they shall go in there, and to them I will give it, and they shall possess it. But as for you, turn and journey into the wilderness in the direction of the Red Sea. You know, then they came and said, no, we have sinned against the Lord.
We will go up and fight.
He tells them not to go up and fight, though.
Let me read that verse 37 there in the New King James, because I
Okay.
love the way it says. It says, the Lord was also angry with me for your sakes, saying, even you shall not go in there. And this is a verse that struck me last night when we were talking about this, because it's the first time I've seen it before, is the fact that Moses' ministry was being a type of Christ.
Right.
And he's fulfilling his ministry. He says God was angry with him for their sakes. When he hit the rock rather than speaking to it
Right.
in disobedience to God, God said, you can't go in because they got to know how serious this is.
Right. Exactly right. We
How
got to
serious trusting me is. Not how serious doing work for me, but how serious trusting me is.
Right.
And it's funny because Moses seems to be perfectly fine with that.
Yeah. You're right about that.
He kept on face-to-face relationship. He didn't go out there, oh, God, I can't believe you're doing this to me. This just wrecks my day.
I mean, he's pretty much, Moses is the one who led them out, physically being the person there who's
Yeah.
led them out.
Yeah,
But it was God going before them always. But
we talked about that last week, about that, he knew who he was. He knew he was the one that was going to deliver him.
right.
And he tried to take it into his own hands to start with. And he spent 40 years in the wilderness before this. And we were talking about he had to figure out God was showing him who he was not.
Right.
That
Right.
he was not going to be a deliverer in the sense of in his strength he was going to deliver the people.
Right.
And then he learned who he was after the burning bush. Or more so who God
More
was.
so who he was. Yeah. Yeah.
And
He kept finding out these new and miraculous things that were just being revealed to him always.
he found out what it was to have a relationship with God.
Amen.
And that be the thing.
Right.
That was the promised land
Right.
for him, basically.
What a gift! I mean, that's incredible. I think about a lot of the things, that JT and I have really just sought to, share through this podcast. We talk about living life. We talk about, just having the opportunity to, be intimate with not only with God but with other people. And Moses knew, hey, this is not going to happen for me. But one of the things is he often, I can't remember where it was he said this, but he says, if you're not going, I'm not going.
Yeah, because God said, you take them on down there. I'm not going. I'm tired of them.
Right. God was ready to.
Yeah.
He's
And,
like,
and Moses says, if you ain't going,
I ain't.
I ain't going.
Right.
And that's it's because he had learned what was important, what was of value, and I personally think, it's just me throwing this out here, but I think it was all about the children of Israel were just a sideline here. Moses, Joshua, and Caleb that's what the story was about.
Right.
People who had intimate relationship with God,
Right.
because when Moses hit the rock rather than speaking to the rock,
Right.
God never mentions what he was dealing with the children of Israel about again.
No.
It goes straight to dealing with Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And the children of Israel just kind of off to the side, you know. But it was all the time about Moses interceding for the
Right.
children, and being that type of Christ and fulfilling who God had made him to be.
It's cool.
It's pretty crazy because it struck me that excuse me, it struck me that God had shown him so well who he was not, that he was like, oh, I can't go speak to Pharaoh. I can't talk. He was pretty humble by that time after 40 years in the wilderness.
That's funny.
I can't go do that.
Good. Here's a good side verse that goes along with this stuff. And for me, you know, part of Moses knowing who he was knowing that, you know, Abraham was considered a friend of God.
Yeah.
Moses knew that. Isaac, Jacob, you know, these are the big, you know, the big three that all gets mentioned. But I think Moses may have knew this about himself as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that Jesus in John 15 brings home is John 15:15, and this is a pretty cool little verse. It says, "No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing." He says, "But I've called you friends." He says, "For I have heard from my Father, and I have made it known to you."
Yeah.
And what a cool thing there, because that's such a good little picture of that little relationship that Moses had with God, that he understood, man, you know, this is not just about being a servant.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, and I'm going to get in trouble for it. Here I am going to get in trouble. I am going to get in trouble for
We
this
always
one.
get in trouble.
I'm going to get in trouble for this one. And I hate to do that, but it just is what it is. We're talking about being servants all the time.
Yeah.
And we talk about if we're not being servants, then we're not disciples. And we talk about if we're not being disciple, you know, if we're not going out and doing stuff for other people, then we're not a servant of God. And it's all based around having a relationship with God as being a servant for Him.
Yeah.
What
We've got to do his work, because he ain't going to do it if we don't.
if there's nothing, and don't hear me say this wrong, because I don't have anything against serving or being a servant. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is is that we are not in this master-slave relationship with God.
Yeah.
We are in a sense, but we're not. It's like it's this. He says literally, "I no longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I've called you friends."
Yeah.
That's different. Friends know they know what the other's thinking. There's a common relationship there. There's a fringe of intimacy that's going on that you definitely know about. And if you trust God, and if you believe what God is saying, and if you're living those things that He has given you to do, and Jesus says it plainly. He says, "For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. I've revealed it."
Yep.
Well, how do we know that? It's through Christ. It's through Him. There's an intimacy that has to happen, and it's no longer just about going out and, you know, helping the homeless. I mean, and I'll get in trouble for that too, saying that. If God is calling you to do that, then you're going to obey that, because you're having an intimate relationship with God that's calling you to do that.
And if you dread it, that means you don't see him as friend.
Yes.
You see him as master. You don't see him as friend. If you dread doing the things that you know God's called you to do.
See, that's good.
Because I was just thinking, you know, me and Jason, I don't mind calling Jason up and say, "Hey, can you come pick me up at the garage? Because I got to drop my car off."
Right.
He don't care. It's no big deal.
No big deal. Yeah.
He's not dreading it. Mm-mm. And I was thinking the other day, whenever the storm was coming, I couldn't get a hold of Jason, and I knew he was at a fall festival thing at the church. I was like, they don't know these storms are coming. So it was my joy to drive out there and say, "Hey, the weather's coming. Let me help you pack all this stuff in."
Yeah, the dude helped me like set tables back up and
But it wasn't anything.
Right.
As far the work part wasn't anything because there was relationship there,
sure.
and it was fun from a relationship standpoint.
Right.
Now, if Jason was my master, I'd have let him blown away out there. You know, and that's the way it is.
JT doesn't know his responsibilities. That's what the problem is. No, that's a good picture. It really is.
Yeah, and it's
It's like Andy being on this podcast for like all of 5 minutes. You know, if we cared, in the sense of him being, he is on a weekend retreat with his wife.
yeah.
Just the fact that he even thought
It's her
about being with
birthday.
us, and it's her birthday, and just the fact that he even thought about being here for 5 minutes, well, that's cool. That's
yeah.
awesome. But just little subtle things like this, and the part of Moses reminds the children of Israel. He reminds them, "Hey, you're going to go forth and take possession of this land."
Oh yeah.
Well, they weren't there. But in a sense, he's telling them, hey, you own this place. And you own it. And it's yours. He goes, now you're going to go take possession of it and live there.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we easily forget is that as sons and daughters of God, who are not only sons and daughters who are intimate with God, who are seeking and pursuing a relationship with God, is that we are a part of an eternal kingdom, and we already possess that land. It's a matter of just having the senses aware and awaking and living there,
Yeah.
and knowing that we are there.
Yeah. Something struck me a minute ago just about the podcast, and it's our heart that this ministers to people. People
Exactly.
who are listening. It's our heart that it encourages.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to tell you, it's not about you.
Right.
It's about us living out our friendship with God and with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that's what ministers to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I think podcast 2 weeks ago, you got to look in on our life for just a moment. And but that was part of it. That's what God had planned. But us sitting here doing this podcast is about our relationship with God.
Right.
And it's about enjoying that relationship. It's about enjoying relationship with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's about. And that's what it'll always be about as long as we do it.
That's right. That's why we do it,
Exactly.
and we love it.
We have no idea who all listens. Because nobody ever writes in hardly. But that it'd be nice if you did, but if you don't,
It's okay.
guess what? We're gonna be here next time and the next time until
right.
God says, "Hey, it's time to
So stop.
time to do something different in this relationship." So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not this. This is not about doing something for God.
Right. If I felt like I had to be here, man, it would be the hardest
Oh
drive.
my goodness.
It'd be the hardest drive over here. I don't feel like I have to be here. That's cool for me because if I had to be here, JT would be a lonely person.
No,
Over
it
here
just
because-
wouldn't be happening.
That's what I'm saying. If I felt like I had to be here, and JT was always expecting me, I'd not be here just because, it would be a duty instead of just being who I am and coming in and doing this thing as God has called us to do. So,
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty simple, but
And that's our goal when we come in
Yeah.
here is to, hey, whatever's in the heart today and whatever's life to us.
and a lot of this stuff is born out of real life junk that we're going through. I mean, if you realize you listened over, I think almost over a year now we've been doing these podcasts. Yeah, even from podcast 1 on, it's been about what we've gone through in life, man.
Maybe
It's-
struggles and maybe excitement about something. You never know what's going to happen from week to week. But it's all about life.
yeah, it's all about life, and it's all about enjoying God. So we're going to leave you with this today, just to let you know that there'll be a 1 week hiatus.
Yes, we'll be back after Thanksgiving after this one.
And
You'll only miss a week, so
Right.
since we're doing this one early.
Right. And but we look forward to doing this stuff, and we look forward to this to share. And so if you are in the process of looking for some stuff on the internet and you want some, go to TeleoRidge.com, TeleoRidge.com /podcast. And you can find us there, or look us up on Facebook. We have our Facebook account, Coffee and Conversation.
Or iTunes.
All right, iTunes and Taleo Ridge Ministries there, and you will find our podcast, and you can listen to it. Even I think a lot of people just listen on Facebook, which is really cool to me because it's just a good avenue to do it. So,
Yep. Easy to get to.
so we thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.